channeling from war-torn Hungary, 1943. You won't want to miss this special episode of Real Life Angel Encounters. Angels, we all have them. They're our unseen guides, our companions, our teachers, and they're all around us. Sometimes they make themselves known in the most miraculous ways. Join me, Level 3 QHHT practitioner, angel communicator, and Reiki master, Christy Clemens Hoffman, with stories from real people who have experienced uplifting phenomena and real-life angel encounters. This very special episode is as real as it gets. If you're a fan of Abraham Hicks, of Bashar, of Cryon, then I think you're going to really resonate with this. The story takes place in 1943, but it is just as relevant and just as important now. And I'm so happy to know that the book is still in circulation. It's still being talked about and is presented in new and different ways for a broader audience. I really do think you're going to like this quite a lot. But before we crack into it, I have a huge favor. Of course, the book, Real Life Angel Encounters, Real People Share Real Stories of Miraculous Encounters, is out everywhere now. As of 2 days ago, I'm recording this July 3rd, 2025, and on July 1st, Real Life Angel Encounters was published here in the United States. So if you pre-ordered your book, thank you so much. If you picked up a copy from me personally at my launch event or someplace else, thank you so much. Your support means the world. But yes, I do have a favor. Now comes the time when reviews are very crucial. So if you did get a copy of Real Life Angel Encounters, Real People Share Real Stories of Miraculous Encounters, please, please, please leave a review. Reviews can be put on Amazon.com or on Goodreads, even barnesandnoble.com. You can put a review there. A simple 5 stars will do. It doesn't have to be much. And I know that's a huge ask, but it really makes a big difference, especially when new people are searching hope. New people are searching angel encounters and wanting to know that we're not alone. So your review, your purchase of the book, listening to this podcast and sharing this podcast boost the numbers so that more and more people can find out about it and share new stories. So you see, it kind of builds on itself. And it's up to you guys. You've been so great so far. And I'm so happy that you're here on this journey with me. All right, on with the interview. Enjoy. Welcome back to Real Life Angel Encounters, everybody. I am Christy, your host, and I love sharing stories of the paranormal, but with positivity, spirituality, with spirits. And I love talking to real people who have had extraordinary events. Today, we're doing something a little special. Today, I have as my guest Shelley Mitchell, who is an adapter, performer, and producer, bi-coastal, and is also the developer and producer and performer of the one-woman show Talking with Angels. If you've never heard of Talking with Angels, you are in for such a treat. Hi, Shelley. I'm so glad to have you.
Likewise, it's fun to be here. And yes.
You know, this book, Talking with Angels, we'll just kind of roll into this slowly because this is a book that I had found in the mid to late 80s. My aunt introduced me to it. Talking with Angels. Yes, that's the one. Yes, holding up the book. I've got my copy over here. I won't go
Oh,
get
good.
it. I should have brought it over here, but I've got my copy too. I've read it in French, I've read it in English, and it is mind blowing. So, yes, this book, Talking with Angels, has been around for a very, very long time. So, let's get into it. What is Talking with Angels about?
The book is actually journal entries of 4 young artists in their 30s who were living in Budapest. And the journal entries began in June 1943. And they went on for 17 months and only ended because 3 of the people were Jewish and they all got deported in December of 1944. They survived in Budapest for 5 or 6 months. There was a slow boil in Hungary, and they lived in relative freedom. They could walk around and shop, but there was a ghetto starting in April of 44. So they had about 10 months of normal life. And then the deportations started. And then these people who had this angel transmission and kept these journal entries, they were in a forced labor factory in Budapest from August or September of 44 until December of 44 when they were all deported. And Gitta Mallasz, who is the one survivor of these four people, found all their journals and preserved their voice and their experience of what we would call today a channeled message. And I want to distinguish that from a mediumship experience where none of this was coming from ancestors or personal voices of people in their family coming to them from the other side. The whole of Talking with Angels is a 17-month mentoring toward being a full human being and discussing, guiding these people in the most horrific of circumstances toward full consciousness and giving a new perspective on our idea about being a complete human being.
And this was such an unexpected, such an out of the blue, random occurrence. I mean, this was spontaneous channeling.
Yes. Well, if in the introduction to the book that Gitta Mallasz, you'll see her name on the spine of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Before it used to be just Gitta Mallasz, now it's Dalos because Hannah Dalos was the voice. Gitta was the survivor.
Right. The scribe.
No, Gitta, Lily, and Joseph, or mainly Gitta and Lily, they wrote down
Mm-hmm.
for each other when they would be getting a session. They were about 10 or 15 minutes max, these sessions. And Hannah was the speaker, so she never wrote anything down. It was the
No,
other.
no. Yeah. Meticulous notes. In fact, your website, Talking with Angels, links to the notebooks. So you can
Yes, you
read
can
it.
see their actual, their one facsimile. An interesting note is that Gita, at the time, young couple in the 80s, that Gita, at the end of her life, was living with, and she asked them to burn all the original notebooks.
No.
And they didn't, because she didn't, as she puts it in some of her personal writings, she didn't want it to become a new age zoo. She didn't want to be another animal in a new agey zoo. And she felt that people would get too attached to the document and not take in what it was saying. So fortunately, I don't know if they did burn it and took pictures of it first or if they still have it. I really don't know the details, but we do have these photographs that are up on that link in my site.
Right. Okay. So, Talking with Angels, from what I remember of the book,
Mhm.
it was a Hannah who just one day said, "Everybody gather around. Something's happening. I don't know what's going on." And then started.
Well, she was never uncertain, and
Okay.
it was only Gita.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking like you and I are talking
Mm-hmm.
when all of a sudden, and this is how the play opens after I introduce what I just more or less introduced to you, but I speak with Hungarian accent in the play. But she says, "Watch out. This is no longer I who will speak." And then she says to Gita, with the history of friendship since they're 15, she says, "That's enough now with your shallow questions. Watch out. Soon you will be asked to account for yourself." And then Gita reports that she started crying because she could feel the phoniness of people pleasing in her personality at about 35. And she could feel that she was being addressed by something way more essential. And she had no idea how to respond in kind to the what we might call today authenticity or purity of the intellectual and emotional eye that was on her.
Mm-hmm.
So the next exchange is Gita stops crying and the angel says, "That's better now. Repentance is also forgiving." And that line always like, what does that mean? Repentance is also forgiving. I have come to think it means that when you repent and understand your phoniness,
Mm-hmm.
it's also forgiving it. The part of you that can identify your phoniness from people pleasing and other pressures from social life, that same part of you can forgive you for, communicating in that way compulsively.
To me, forgiveness means releasing the energy of it. So it doesn't mean, to me, forgiveness is that it no longer holds a sway over me and I've let it go. And so I'm wondering if
That to me, that's two chess moves ahead of where I'm speaking. You're two chess moves ahead because I know in myself when I have caught myself where, because I'm an actor
right.
and I'm also in some powerful rooms, and I can feel when I'm networking or trying to socially get ahead, and when I'm in the present moment with the person. They're two distinct vibrations.
Right.
And consciously choosing to see the full spectrum of what our mind as a human being is doing. Part of us is networking, and part of us is feeling the deeper meaning and connection with the person and the person. And most of us are split in that way. And for me, a big part of talking with angels is the first step is to have a kind of fearless inventory to look at all what's going on in us
Hmm.
in a moment. So I say that you're two chess moves ahead of where I'm speaking from, is because in this scenario, nobody's trying to be a better person.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. It's just take a snapshot and fearlessly look at what being a human being is through the grid of yourself.
Mhm.
And that's very different than assuming that we even are able to see the full spectrum of all the games we play inside ourself and outside of ourself. So it's very exacting and it's a very powerful beginning of, so, when you're acting, when you're an actor of a certain, love that I have for dramatic acting, you want to understand, at least in your own way, what the hell you're saying and not just say it in a pretty way, like when you might read a fairy tale or a children's book. You really have to say, what do I actually understand without reducing it to where you are? You want to come up to what you think it might be saying. And so I'm always open. Every time I perform it, I understand something new. So our brain and can only understand wherever we're at. And after I've been performing it for over 20 years, I still get excited, as you can see, reciting it and performing it.
You've performed this over 400 times.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Okay, well, let's back up even before the play. How did you find out about this extraordinary event and the book?
I was in a Gurdjieff cult. Have you ever heard of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky?
I've heard of it and I have no idea what that is.
Gurdjieff is kind of the Rosetta Stone for the Est movement, for Scientology, for Osho. There was a documentary called Wild Wild Country where Osho is being interviewed, and he cites Gurdjieff directly as being a template. And what Gurdjieff had a kind of cosmology that is fascinating. And Gurdjieff introduced the Enneagram to the Western world, if you've heard of the Enneagram.
I have.
And then some people in the 80s took the graphics of the Enneagram and reconfigured it to make it more corporate friendly and started doing corporate workshops with it. But the Gurdjieff, they always acknowledge that it comes from Gurdjieff at the opening of their books. And they were actually sued by the Gurdjieff Foundation for, well, it's a geometric symbol.
Oh.
So it's in the public domain, I guess, but they completely gutted and hollowed out the magic of it and made it into something that appeals more to the left hemisphere of the brain instead of something that unites the right and left hemisphere. It just becomes another, oh, you're a 2 and you're a 7, and thinking, and they eliminate the original presentation of it, which is a little more complicated than the books that they have written. So you can see I have an attitude. But they've gotten very, very popular. But I am also a corporate coach, and I use the original Enneagram, which you can share with a person in a day. You don't need to pay thousands of dollars over a weekend. They made it into an industry,
Yes.
and bless their industriousness. but I do use it in my mentoring and coaching. So I coach non-actors and business people and actors in LA. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful. So you came from that background. How did you find this
Oh,
material?
so I was studying acting in New York at the Actors Studio, if
Mhm.
you've ever heard of the Actors Studio.
Yes, very well
And
known.
Lee Strasberg was my teacher.
Hmm.
And I met Ellen Burstyn, the actress. She started mentoring me and introduced me to the works of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. And inadvertently, she was not in this cult, but someone she knew jumped me in. And I ended up being there for over 15 years because the ideas are very compelling and very powerful. The group is called the Fellowship of Friends. And on Spotify, in the end of 2023, there was a podcast about this group called Revelations. And Oprah said that this podcast was the most important podcast of 2023.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's called Revelations by Jennings Brown.
Hmm.
And that is the group I was in. And I got into it in 1975. And by 1981, articles began coming out about the leader of the group, Robert Burton. I don't even want to say his name, having relations with our husbands
Oh my.
and swearing them to secrecy. And with other young men, he banned homosexuality. So he made a free, he was a little like Trump,
Cornered the market.
cornered the market, and then told we were all experiencing synchronicity in this group. And he told us that if we ever left the group, according to Gurdjieff, so he was kind of taking the Gurdjieff line, that if we ever left the group, the synchronicities would cease. So that's a big honking lie, as we all know. And I hadn't read that much of Jung or anything else to know, but I was experiencing synchronicities like crazy. So
Hmm.
I was, and then in my acting, I would go to acting class about a month or so after I joined this group of being present and being very sensitive. And Lee Strasberg, no less, said, what's happened to you? You jumped up 10 notches here, all in one fell swoop. I didn't say anything, but I just thought, wow, whatever I'm doing in this group is having an effect in where I'm ambitious and want to do something. So, like many, I was just an insecure person, and it was easier to lose myself in the group than to continue being in that group and pursue acting. But by 1981, these articles came out, and then someone who was very high up in the group confirmed to me that these articles were true. I was having a crisis. I was
Right.
living in London. I had an Israeli friend. We were just talking. I was telling her, what in the heck are we in? And I was 31, and I just thought, I'm too old to go back to acting. I don't know what I'm doing in the world. She gave me Talking with Angels.
Oh my goodness.
And in especially the early entries, journal entries, were so resonant with the Gurdjieff work that it was the first cornerstone where I understood I was being lied to about, I didn't even have the word synchronicity,
Oh
but
wow.
it was the first stepping stone for me to understand that we each have our own relationship with the divine and that there's no one else that can define for us that relationship. So I'm older now and I have the street cred to speak, but I place it a priority to help young people, help anyone keep their own vibrancy with whatever is happening to them front and center, because that's really where their power is. There's no cosmology I'm going to tell them that's going to move the needle. Where they feel something is where the needle will move. So that's been a big learning for me in my coaching and work with people.
Very interesting. I love how all of these things dovetail with each other. They all just kind of overlap and intertwine. The big Venn diagram of everything just comes together. Does that tells me that there's something to all of this? And then, of course, you're right.
What do you mean? What do you mean something to all of what?
There's something to all of this. So all of these messages from the angels that were being channeled in Hungary, from Edgar Casey, from even the background in the cult, there was a kernel of truth in there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But
Well,
all
yeah.
kind of overlaps and dovetails.
Well, I think the X factor here that is so startling to all of us
Hmm.
is that we have and are having direct interface with non-physical intelligence.
Exactly.
And especially as women, and I'm a Jewish woman, so we defer to men. In fact, women in the Orthodox and ultra Orthodox, bless them, the morning prayer of the men has a line in the first 5 or 10 lines of their morning prayer. Thank you, God, for not making me a woman.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And then the women's equivalent line is, thank you, God, for making me to your will.
Oh,
So I didn't know this at a young age, but I would go to high holiday services and I could tell this place isn't on my team. And you would have to, AI this or Google it, but women need a male counterpart in order to pray. Women are told that there's some extra hoop they have to jump through to pray to God. And so many religions have a gatekeeper. And so it is very destabilizing for deep people of faith, people having miracles happen by whatever name they choose to call this higher force, that I feel now it's important to look at the vigor of a person's faith without importance on what they call it, because that connection is created and they are having miraculous experiences. And the number one person is Trump,
Donald
Donald
Trump.
Trump.
What do you mean?
He was raised by Norman Vincent Peale.
That's true. He was.
He is manifesting. He's simply manifesting. And we who are not into what he's manifesting would do well to find joy and manifest for ourselves straight up. He's showing everybody how to manifest. He is manifesting.
I
Not that
would.
I like him,
I don't
but
care for what he's manifesting.
yes, he's not my cup of tea for any Trump supporters that may be watching, but he is compelling in his ability to manifest. And he's showing us straight up, like Esther Hicks Abraham. And Talking with Angels has the exact same message as Abraham.
Okay, the message of Abraham, basically the law of attraction, which is
It's a big part of it, is a big part of, they don't say it quite as colloquially as Esther Hicks puts it, which makes it easy. But shamefully, I have to say, when I first started doing Talking with Angels, some Esther Hicks followers, it was 2001, there was no YouTube. They came to me after the show and they insisted that I had to know Abraham. And it all sounded funny to me, the woman going, Abraham. And I had just gotten out of a cult and I just responded. I said, I just got out of a cult and I just can't, but thank you. And so they're the ones that told me about the similarity. And then I began years later to really learn about Abraham and I couldn't not see it. It's like one of those optical illusions where I couldn't unsee how connected it was. And then I learned more. And the thing about the Gurdjieff work and synchronicity, as in many patriarchal constructs,
mhm.
the message in the Gurdjieff work, a very famous line, is put a pebble in your shoe. Make yourself uncomfortable and have that discomfort remind you to be present in the moment.
Mm,
Because in the present moment is where all the power is in connection with other realms.
right.
And so we were sold the idea as young people to be against our bodies, be against ourselves, that was paving a superhighway to the divine and synchronicity. And of course, the law of attraction, if you believe something, the law of attraction will bring you what you believe. And so
Hmm.
I am a standing here believing something that now I know was not in my interest. And I'm building a way greater surface area that's connected to non-physical intelligence than all those years of punishing myself or doing things against what I wanted, what I really felt like doing, thinking that I was what Gurdjieff proposes to people is that during our lifetime, this is wrong-headed stuff. So listeners, please stay alert. That during our lifetime, we have an astral body, and the more we are present and in our essence rather than our false personality, that we are feeding our astral body, which can then survive death.
Mhm.
And so that's pretty intimidating to sensitive young people. And it's wrong because we all know we have mediumship connections with ancestors who weren't doing any of this.
Oh, right.
And that there's so much near-death experiences and other things that are
Calling it.
available now.
Mhm.
But this is where Gurdjieff was his own cult leader. That's a pretty intimidating thing, saying, I'm going to give you exercises and things that will help you survive death.
Right. Right.
So liberating oneself, as all of us, many other cult survivors have similar intimidating ideas that they were given.
Well, it's all
And
about fear.
yes, yes. And in talking with angels, it's about wonder and joy
Mm-hmm.
and that feeling within yourself of that warm satisfaction of joy and wonder. I love babies, so like holding a baby. And in the group I was in, we were told that children were a waste of time because we could be doing a task to build the ark of the school. So I had to go my own journey to know what gives me joy. And the patriarchal construct will diminish things like that kind of joy from
Well,
that.
in other channeling, Abraham and Bashar, notably, Cryon too, just following your joy is where our biggest point of attraction is because joy is same vibration as love, and love is all there is. So it just
Yes.
all comes together.
Yes, that's what. So of late, with YouTube and everything, built on top of a pre-internet pursuit, or, it's not like I got to be in my 40s or 50s and all of a sudden got interested in this. I was reading Khalil Gibran when I was 12 years old, and Mayor Baba when I was 17, and I took LSD when I was 19 and was reading Be Here Now, and so Alan Watts. So I've been all about this my whole life.
Right. Where did Talking with Angels fit into that, do you think?
That it had no hidden agenda.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, that struck me too. Yeah, no hidden agenda. Like all the best channeling, right? I think has no hidden agenda.
Well, it's a little obtuse. It's a little bit hard.
It is
Like
dense.
I can complete for the listeners the whole first dialogue right now.
Yes.
So that's enough now with your shallow questions. Watch out. Soon you'll be asked to account for yourself. Are you ashamed? Oh, that's better now. Repentance is also forgiving. It's time for you to transform yourself. Be independent. You don't understand me. You've got too much inert matter and too little independence. The seed is not sown on hard ground. You'll be tilled by an endless searching, and what has been good will become bad, and what has been bad will become good. Do you know me? Do you know me? You are pagan, but that's good. You'll be baptized by the water of life. You'll receive a new name. The name exists. I cannot yet reveal it to you. Prepare yourself for it. You may ask me one of your questions. The one who speaks, she's tired. Give her strength. We will meet again. That's the
The
first
first
dialogue.
yeah, I would call it a transmission, but yes, the first dialogue.
Because it's a one woman show, I've woven what Gita said back. But I do one-on-one coaching where I have my clients read it instead of me, and then writing down what it means to them, and then going deeper because everyone has a different response. Some people read that, they just start crying,
Hmm.
kind of like Gita was. And so I work with people, I work through it. I
Mm-hmm.
work through almost like dream interpretation, but it's in real time. And there are 88 entries, and I've seen threads of repeated themes in the 88 entries. But so when I do one-on-one coaching with people, I actively use Talking with Angels as our template.
I think that is fascinating because I mean, I think that's what it was intended. It's to be in a way instruction manual, right? A
Well,
way.
it almost didn't exist because they got deported and Gita could have been easily killed. And Hannah and Lily, so it was Hannah Dalosh, Lily Strauss, and Josef Kreutzer, who was Hannah's husband. And also they were first cousins. So they never had children. And it was quite chaotic, of course, when they were deported. And fortunately, Gita was not shot, but Hannah and Lily actually could have escaped. And as they were, Gitta Mallasz was honored by Yad Vashem, if you know what that is. It's a museum in Israel to the Holocaust where there's a whole area for non-Jews who sheltered Jews. And Gitta Mallasz is on in that named in that area for saving 100 Jewish women and children during the Holocaust. And her friends, Hannah and Lily, could have escaped with those 100 women and children. They chose to let themselves be captured. And they thought if the Hungarian Nilos, that's the SS of Hungary, didn't have prisoners to support, Gita surely would have been shot, and then the whole dialogues would have been lost. So we only have the dialogues by accident.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, so in terms of somebody maybe just meeting this information and feeling that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in other modalities, there are no smoke and mirrors in this. And I needed that badly as recovering from a cult or for a first step out. I needed that very, very badly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a feminine message.
Okay, tell me more about that. Why do you think it's a feminine message?
Well, here is a book called The Gospel of Mary
Oh,
Magdalene.
it's on my
And
list.
yes, Jean-Yves Leloup and actress Juliette Binoche
Oh
is
yeah.
Talking with Angels is her favorite book. She carries it with her all the time.
Oh my goodness.
And she came to see Talking with Angels actually and told me about this. And on page right here,
Hmm.
it says on Friday, October 29th, 1943, in the midst of the Nazi horror that had overtaken Hungary, a voice spoke to Gitta Mallasz and her friends. And then he quotes Talking with Angels, but this is a study of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
Yes,
And
yes.
he says how the angel message, and this is kind of a, if you're familiar with Talking with Angels and some of the sacred geometry, it goes with what Mary Magdalene was painting too.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's only one kind of giant connection to a feminine spiritual voice. But, Hannah was, in any channeler, you're going to get the personality of the channeler in the message. And to me, as a Jewish person who was a spiritual seeker, I could feel a kind of Jewish Talmudic connection. Even Hannah was not very much an assimilated family, but I could feel this combination. It was like I'm that kind of Jewish person, that is unaffiliated with the religion,
Right.
but deeply spiritual and deeply culturally Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And that also really affected me in not being able to put the book down.
Right, right, right. Why do you think this group of friends was chosen? Why were they chosen to receive these messages?
No idea. I don't know.
It's interesting. When we're talking about the personality and the filter, the lens of the channeler, just like that's why Abraham Hicks is called Abraham Hicks, because it comes through Esther Hicks's lens, right? So these messages are universal. They were extremely timely. They were groundbreaking at the time as well, although I don't know if anybody really understood that. But anybody could have been chosen, and maybe others were. I'm sure they were, because we receive messages all the time from the divine. But
Yeah, that's my point. We're all chosen all the time. It's
right.
just whether we are tuning in. I think you're chosen, I'm chosen, we're
Mhm.
chosen right now. I mean, people are gonna maybe who are getting out of a cult or who are will hear this and feel held or, be
all need
benefiting in some way.
we all need these messages, and we all do receive them, but there are certain people for whom the message really resonates, and they know that there's something important there. And so I'm just
Uh,
wondering.
yes. I mean, there is something important for all of us, but I think that Hannah, as she's described in the intro by Gita, was a very intuitive person. And I had the privilege in working with the material. Hannah's brother was also named Joseph Dallosh, and you can Google him. He was a scientist and lived in London, so he survived this whole thing. And he married a woman much younger. Her name was Ava Pinter when I met her. She was remarried, but she was 25 years younger than her husband. And she gave me some items that belonged to Hannah. She sent me some fabric that Hannah designed as a graphic artist and a drawing that Gitta made of Hannah. It's on my website, I think. I use that drawing a lot. And she said that her husband, Hannah's brother, said that even as a child, the family recognized that Hannah was deeply intuitive, but nothing like talking with angels, but just as a person one-on-one, a deeply feeling and intuitive person. And then, so the voices came through Hannah.
Mhm.
And Lily, on the other hand, was more of what we might call a new agey person, constantly giving her power over to this voice coming through Hannah. And the voice coming through Hannah would say, "Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Don't give your power to me." And so that's a whole different personality than Gita, who was raised in a military family and was very filled with a structure. And her angel had a very different take on the message to Gita. And then Joseph, who we don't have too many notes from his journal entries because he was the first one to be deported. And but we do have a little bit from Joseph, but it's a whole other voice of an angel. So for half of the book, it's about a 450-page book. Half of it is a Q&A that was written down in notes. The second half was just transmission where the angels said, "We will no longer give you personal messages." It was like they were trying to get them to understand their full potential as human beings. And they said the first half of the book was to get them to a place psychologically where they could absorb a higher message.
Mm.
So I actually, the first half of the book is very relatable because many people are just trying to get our mind straight to focus on what are disembodied intelligences that seem to be benevolent and at our back trying to tell us. And the second half of the book is just this message that is about light and matter. And Gita actually spoke at scientific conferences because there's allusions to string theory and sacred geometry and scientific geometry. So that's a little above my head, but the symbol on the front of the book, this symbol is basically the message of talking with angels in a geometric form, which is why it's on the cover of the book.
So, can you explain more about this diagram?
Yeah, the number 7
Okay.
is very important in their repeated, and it connects with these circles that I showed you in the Mary Magdalene book, if
Yes.
you connect that. And that each kind of point, there's a point here, and then a circle and 7 more points. And then each one of those branches off infinitely into 7 more points. And beyond that, I can't confidently say what psychological or philosophical correspondences there are, except that everything's connected, which we hear in many places. And I can say that the words at the end in the last dialogues, light and matter, that we are light and matter with a voice
Hmm.
and that what is special about human beings, that animals are connecting with the divine as well, but they don't have written language.
Right.
And so our ability to communicate as human beings, the word is special. And I'm still learning about the specialness of it, but that we as human beings have a very joyous and satisfying gift to interface personally with the divine, but we give it away to people who we think have more authority than us to communicate directly with the divine. So one of the biggest messages is, especially, it's also a really inspiring message for artists of any kind, of opening yourself to yourself, and that Venn diagram of where our self overlaps with the divine, because that is always happening. But our left hemisphere of our brain is like way overwhelmed with that. And so integrating the right and left hemisphere of our own life experience on a day-to-day level is a big subject right now. And I feel it's also very connected with this gift we have to interface directly with the divine.
We all have that ability. Jesus talked about this in the New Testament. It's just as
Yes, yes,
the way of rebelling against the Old Testament, I believe, but that we
yes.
don't need any intermediaries. We are God. We are God. We're all part of
Yes, you can call it what you want. I mean, I'm still calling it non-physical intelligence because I
perfect.
don't know the extent of it. I
Mm.
do know that I get lovely synchronicities and recovering from being in a cult where I thought I had to put pebbles in my shoe to complete myself, to thinking, "Oh, no, I need an ice cream sundae to complete myself, and I'm going to go get it." That is like 180 degrees opposite of what I indoctrinated myself with.
Well, do I have to put a pebble in my shoe and be uncomfortable to be present in the moment, or could that be through ice cream? So,
Yes, well, Gurdjieff says the pebble is your better bet. So for those of us brought up not only in Gurdjieff, but in many modalities, especially women, our orgasm as women, we have been taught that.
simple.
I really say that word orgasm. For any women listening, you're honoring your orgasm and however you get it. We have very different lives and very different biology than men. And one of the easiest things for women to do is put that orgasm on the altar of sacrifice.
No, that's a very good point, right? So denying who we truly are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think sexuality, it's also a big part of talking with angels, in my humble opinion, and feminine sexuality, because men just don't have that same, or, the majority of men don't have that same oppression to their expression
They
of
do.
their pleasure and joy in that way. So in that sense, also, I feel talking with angels, it's not even that hidden of female fulfillment.
Hmm. Hmm. Back to this image on the cover of Talking with Angels. In fact, I don't believe that is on the cover of my copy of it. I believe it's just white with maybe raised embossed lettering. But
Oh yeah, I know that edition. This is the fifth edition, most recent.
okay. So this image, so put a link to view this image in the show notes, but it's a point that spreads out like beams of light to other
Mhm,
points that spread out to be like beams of light to other points to other points to other points.
mhm, mhm. Let me get it here.
Yeah.
See if we can get any enlightenment from.
Now, I believe that it's very much like what Julia and Dolores Cannon describe as the interconnectedness of souls. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Well,
So
it has many different meanings, and it looks like a menorah as well, which is
yeah,
weird.
which is very
Um,
strange. So this diagram that shows, all these different levels and layers of us, but I believe that the image that is depicted on the cover of the book shows how each one of us radiates out to everybody else and just proves the interconnectedness of
Here's
every.
another introduction to that shape with different notation on it.
Right, right, right. So if you're listening to the audio, you can go to the video to see these diagrams that we are referring to.
They're from the book. Here's another.
Mhm.
So what I think is that this is, if you complete the circle and then put it like that, it's hanging down
Interesting.
to another point from the middle, and that the human being is that middle point. So
Hmm.
you've got mineral, plant, animal, the human being, angel, seraph, and the seventh, which is the infinite. So that the human being is uniting the non-physical world and the physical world. That is with
Right.
language. So it's not to say that there aren't other living creatures, but we have written language, we have language. And I think, as we know, other large mammals have language of their own, but it's not written down. There's something particular about our gifts as humans. And I think that, just to be succinct, and especially in the work I do, coaching with people, especially today, superficiality and people pleasing is taking all the bandwidth of our attention.
Mm.
And fear of not fitting in or fears in relation to that realm are preventing people from experiencing the full power of themselves as a human being to interface with the divine. And the way I put it sometimes is it's as if you deprived a dog of their sense of smell,
Mm-hmm.
told a dog to ignore their sense of smell. It's one of their greatest gifts.
Right. It's how they experience their world.
Yes, but we as humans have been hypnotized. And something else that I wanted to say about channeling, I have grandchildren, and when my granddaughter was, I think, 3, a friend of mine, it was during COVID, and a friend of mine who's a young person, she's a dance teacher, she came over and did a little private dance class for a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And then the 3-year-old all of a sudden said to her, "Watch yourself on the jungle gym." And my friend started crying because there was some residence with her grandfather talking to her about a jungle gym, and her, I can't remember the details, but my granddaughter said something out of the blue, completely pertinent to a meaningful incident with my friend's grandfather. And so you children are channeling, people are getting messages left, right, and center, but I think it's rattling to our everyday rational mind.
Well, it is. Maybe we've been taught, maybe we've been indoctrinated to think that real people like us cannot have these experiences, that you have to be Joan of Arc, that you have to be some sort of holy person. And that's actually why I started the Real Life Angel Encounters podcast and wrote the book Real Life Angel Encounters, so that we know that we don't have to be anything special. We are special. We are inherently able to receive these gifts and messages. And I
I'm
think,
feeling you. Yeah.
right. And I think this experience that happened in Budapest, Hungary in 1943 from 1944 is one of the most tangible experiences of this, that real
Yes.
people can be tapped. I channel as well. And when I first started, it was a strange sensation. I felt this sensation in my throat, and it was like I was being asked to move my throat aside so that someone else could talk. But
Wow.
all of us can do this,
What? Yes. Yes.
right? All
It's
of us
really,
have the ability to connect with that, because that is what we all are.
yes. And I think, like I say, I've never channeled myself in the way that you're describing.
Mhm.
And I think we all have a different aptitude for it. And I'm fascinated. I want you to channel for me. But it doesn't diminish any of us on our path or where we are. Or when I perform Talking with Angels, I definitely feel taken over by something. So perhaps something is coming through me in performance. But I'm kind of a bridge between the rational world and the non-physical world.
I love that. I think we need that. So tell me, how did the play come about? You read the book, you internalized the book, you had this religious experience, and of course, maybe theater is your form of expression, but why did you think it needed to be a play?
The minute I saw it, it was a script. It's written like a script.
Yeah.
Angel says, Gita says, Lily says, it's written exactly like a script. And I saw, whoa. And this is in the early 80s. It was first published in English. I got the first edition in English in 83,
Okay.
it was. So maybe 82. So I actually wrote to Gitta Mallasz, and she wrote me back
Oh
saying,
my gosh.
she didn't want Hollywood, as if I was from Hollywood, but to trivialize her experience with her friends. And then in 1999, I performed a 7-person cast, an adaptation at the San Francisco Fringe Festival. We won the best of the festival.
Oh my gosh.
And there were online reviews because the internet was new. And the publisher had given me permission to play with it for a little festival, but he saw the online reviews and invited me to visit him in Einsiedeln, Switzerland, which I have connections to Italy. So I brought my daughter when she was about 5 or 6. I can't remember. I can't remember. Maybe she was 10. And we went to Einsiedeln, and he showed me 3 hours of Gita in his own private tapes he made of her speaking English, telling her story. And
Oh,
that is where I got in my head, oh my God, I could do what she's doing right now as her. And that is how the idea of a solo show which is more portable than a multicast show. So yeah, I can bring my show. I brought it to communities and spiritual groups, and I just performed it here in New York in March.
Is it recorded anywhere so that we can view it?
I did have it up, but I took it down because I don't like the recording. But I have on YouTube, I have a little snippets where you can see little snippets of it. You can go to talkingwithangels.com. And on YouTube, if you type in Talking with Angels, Shelley Mitchell, and subscribe, I need subscribers. I have the audiobook. I have recorded the whole audiobook for free
Oh,
on
wow.
YouTube. So if you go to my channel, Shelley Mitchell, you'll see a playlist that is the whole book of Talking with Angels. So you can read it and hear my interpretation vocally of the different people talking and different angels talking. I don't know if you knew I did the audiobook.
I did not. I saw the
Okay.
audiobook on the website, but I had not clicked it yet.
Yeah, it's free on YouTube, and I need to hit 1,000 subscribers.
Right?
So if anyone would like to subscribe, and you can hear the
I will.
whole audiobook for free. And the publisher, Robert Hinshaw, said as long as I'm doing it on a small scale, it's fine. We have a memorandum of understanding between us. Oh, but I still feel it does have pertinence in today's world.
Oh, yeah.
And
To it now.
I just did it, and I may do it again next year here in New York. I feel like that's kind of birthplace where it can birth into a larger thing.
My last question for you, of the teachings in Talking with Angels, what really has changed your life the most? What has made the biggest impact?
That we have not one, but thousands of angels tending to us, that we can't even grasp how many angels are tending to us even right now, and that living our lives as best we can in relation to our path has magic in it.
Yeah.
So not that I more than try. I feel very, very held and blessed. And it doesn't mean you don't have challenges in life, but for every challenge that I have, there's some kind of crazy coincidence, miracle that sees me through.
Wow. This has been such a pleasure. Shelley Mitchell is the adapter and performer of the one-woman play, Talking with Angels, adapted from the book, Talking with Angels, from the early 40s. Channelings that are groundbreaking and mind-changing. Their website is talkingwithangels.com. Is there anything else that you would like to promote or share?
Yeah, I have my professional site is shelleymitchell.org. Shelley's with an EY. That's about it. Those two websites. I'm performing right now, if anyone's in New York City. I'm performing in a play called Machinal. I like to say Machinal, but it's at the New York City Center on 55th Street at the Manhattan Theater Club, 55th between 6th and 7th. So I'll be there until July 13th performing. And then, yeah, so that's all. And if anyone's interested in working with me or
You do
working,
wellness coaching and executive coaching.
yes.
Wonderful. And I love that your coaching is based on these angel messages.
Well, my wellness coaching, the executive coaching, they're raising venture capital.
Oh,
So
okay. But
but I watch synchronicities happen with them too, and we
yes,
discuss it. So yes, so all of the
yes,
above.
yes, yes, all of the above. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been so much fun, Shelley.
Likewise. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and follow, and be sure to share this episode. The more people who know about this podcast, the more great story submissions we get. Have a story to share? Email your own real-life angel encounter to angelencounterspodcast@gmail.com or visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/real-life angel encounters podcast. Or join our Facebook group and continue the discussion. Want to know what your angels and loved ones have to tell you? Schedule an appointment with me at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. A special thanks to James Wheeler for the original music and to Tiffany Baumgarten for the logo design.